Well, hello everybody. Welcome to this Sonic Lab special presentation. As you can see in front of me, I have the Pittsburgh Modular TAIGA, which was announced about a month ago in a very stylish and kind of metaphorical ad campaign. And we're really lucky to be able to have Michael and Richard from Pittsburgh Modular here. They're joining us remotely in a special three-way action, as we also have Mr. Gaz Williams, who's got a TAIGA in Bristol. We were going to have him here in person, but it was frankly just a lot more straightforward to do it remotely. So that's what we're doing. Yeah. So Gaz, you've got yours there. I've got mine here. And you guys have got yours there as well. I see you've got yours at a jaunty angle. How very cheeky of you. So what I wanted to start with is just a brief overview. I'll attempt this, and then as I get it increasingly wronger, either of you guys can just jump in and just correct me. So what we have here is it's a desktop synthesizer. I believe it's also rack mountable, Eurorack style. It kind of creates, it's got the kind of greatest hits of Pittsburgh, I think. So we've got these advanced, complex oscillators. There are 3 of them in the TAIGA. They have wave folding and wave shaping. And are really quite, they're like an evolution. I think the closest relative is possibly the Capt Big O, which is your collaboration with Create Audio. Is that about right?
That's just about right. Yeah, this is really, these oscillators, we've been working on the cores for quite a few years. And the idea of cascading wave shaping, the idea of running the waveforms through multiple wave shapers before they hit the output is something that we've been working on now for about 5 years. That really started with the microvolt, even before the voltage lab. But on TAIGA specifically, the idea that we have the oscillators going through the wave shapers and then through our warp circuit that we developed, and then through the wave folder, you just create huge sounds.
Sort of super complex, right?
Let's give a little demonstration of this then. So on mine, I've got a very, very simple, like hardly anything going on. I've just got a organ envelope, filter fully open, and I've just got, just going to turn up, we've got a mixer here. So we've got the 3 oscillators and a noise on the mixer. I'm just going to turn up here, and we're going to listen to the just the sine wave. And now as I move through the shape here.
Right, so that's classic wave folding.
That's classic wave shaping, yeah. But something that's kind of pretty cool is that all of the waveforms are able to go through this kind of shaper, which isn't you're not meant to be able to do this, are you? So so
you got combinations.
And I think if we go to the square wave, we get
good old pulse width. Yes, I was going to. That was my gag, Gaz. I was going to do that. Here's mine. I've got some pulse width going on. So I've got a pulse width here set up. So yes, everybody, the question is often, does it do PWM? And yes, it does. So Richard, just tell me a little bit about. So the Michael as well. I guess you two are involved in the actual. In the design of these oscillators, are they kind of an ongoing thing? I mean, so when do you kind of go, this oscillator's finished?
When do we get to say that?
We never say that.
It's an evolution. Analog electronics really are an evolution. We're building on our previous ideas and our previous research all the time. So where we are with TAIGA, we think these sound beautiful and they give TAIGA a very distinct voice, but are they done? No, they sound great, but we're going to tweak them again and we'll do something else. It's just like Capt Big O is a great example. That was developed in parallel with TAIGA, and although they use both the same oscillator core, they have very distinct sounds.
Yeah, absolutely.
We should mention there, when I was stepping through on the, when I was stepping here, I was pushing a button labeled seed rather than oscillator shape. So I think a little bit of an explanation of that, I think, would be really cool.
Yeah, sure.
Right. Well, the idea is that behind the word seed is that it's the the kernel that from which the waveform grows. So instead of sort of thinking the whole way through that you're going to be making music out of triangles or sawtooths, it's more like you plant that seed at the beginning of the process that goes through folding, shaping, and so on. So by the time it comes out after going through the warp circuit, the folder, the filter, and then the dynamic circuit, that it's changed its look and feel so much that it's a grown evolution from the seed that you planted.
Yes, so
Right,
interesting. So when you press the seed button, then we can see that it steps through different lighting combinations. Now I know that this one, when they're all lit, every press, we're getting different wave shapes.
Oh, is that the random thing, like on the West Pest?
Yes, exactly.
Ah, okay.
That was even when we developed that for the East Beast and West Pest. I put that in sort of as a joke because I thought it was entertaining and it was an easy way to test on my end. But it was so fun and it sounded so good that it was obvious that we had to put it in TAIGA as well.
Excellent.
Yeah. So when you press
No
that seed
wasted
button,
press.
you can see different combinations then. So, if I step all the way through and we start with a sine, second press, then we've got sine and triangle lit up. I mean, we can hear what that sounds like when I sweep through here. What's going on then? Why are we hearing different things? What's the different combinations?
It's really simple. You have the first LED, the top LED, the sine wave, that's the waveform. And then if you have two LEDs on, that just means you're sending that waveform through the warp circuit. So what that does is it gives you multiple versions of the same waveform. Now you don't hear it as much in the waveforms with fewer harmonics like the sine wave, but as you get up to the saw wave, there is a big difference between the warped version and the non-warped version. As you sweep through the harmonics, you can really hear. Without it, the saw through the shaper almost sounds like a pulse width, but with it, it's just big and beefy.
Right. Oh, nice. I should also point out that these oscillators, I'm in the Captain Big O, which is something that I reviewed, and it's a great sounding oscillator. Even without the shaping and the folding, there's just a really good, solid, thunderous kind of classic waveform. So you're getting that as well as all this complexity, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is something that we've had all along. The idea that we have this big core of waveforms to build off of makes it very easy to make them sound good when we run them through other processes.
Right, we've got good seeds.
Good seed, good genetics. Yeah, right. Let's not go there. The other thing that I wanted to point out there. So there are three. These are identical, essentially, or at least as I understand them. But there's also another function which you could use. So by pressing the shift and then the seed, you can it switches on or off MIDI control. So now this one is just tunable, and it's tunable over a really wide range. So I can take the output of that and I can bring that into the shape. So if I can actually have I can go down from very low frequency oscillation right up into high audio rates. So there's an awful lot of additional modulation purposes. You don't have to use an LFO. You can use either or any of them as LFOs as well, of fixed frequency, right?
That's right.
And that comes from our history in Eurorack. So when you turn MIDI off, essentially you get a full range Eurorack oscillator where you're not limited by a certain range of the oscillator. We want to make sure that just like Big O, you get low LFO all the way up to high audio. Because as a modulation source, that gives you the most opportunities then to experiment.
Absolutely.
We should mention then, though, those three oscillators are identical, except when they are in the MIDI mode, they're scaled differently. The pitch ranges are different.
Well,
On
actually,
the big knob, yes.
I noticed that 2 and 3 were had a very wide tuning range compared to Oscillator 1 when it was in MIDI mode. You still got quite a wide range. Am I imagining that? Is that right?
No, that's true, and that just makes it more flexible. So Oscillator 1, it's really just a fine-tuned pitch. Oscillator 2, you have an octave in either direction, and Oscillator 3, you have 2 octaves in either direction.
Okay.
Now, you can get more. You just simply have to turn off Midi and set the sort of center frequency you want, and then just patch the pitch out from the Midi to CV into the pitch into the oscillator. So
Gotcha.
you do have a lot of range.
Actually, that brings us into quite a good point to talk about, is that the patch points, unlike some of the other, what is this? Is this 60 HP?
It is.
Yes.
Yeah, 60 HP. So, which is the same as you'll find on other synths like the Moog semi-modular range, which have all their patch points on the right-hand side. Here, we've got the patch points underneath. And I guess if I was to take out a Sharpie and just draw lines, you can actually, all of the patch points are lined up directly underneath. So actually, the paradigm of it being multiple modules together, it kind of makes a lot more sense. It's easier to navigate and find where the ins and outs that are directly related to the different sections kind of live.
2 reasons you would want to do that. One is that it keeps your brain focused on what you're working on, because the patch points are near the knobs you're turning. And the second reason is more of a boring engineering reason, but it just means you don't have to run traces all the way across the board, across everything else, to a central patch bay. So it eliminates a lot of opportunities for bleed and that type of thing.
One thing I did want to ask, guys, paraphonic mode. It's paraphonic as well. You can play up to 3 notes. I hadn't got round to setting that up. Can you just explain to me how you set up paraphonic mode, please?
Paraphonic mode, it does 2 notes at a time. And the way it works is you simply patch out of the velocity into the pitch input of one of the oscillators, and then you would set the mode by doing the edit ARP button.
Okay, I'm going to open, in an exciting development, I'm going to open one of the included Nazca Noodle patch packs, and I'm going to try that myself. But carry on, Gaz. I'll try and set this up while you maybe interject with some other fascinating insight. Because so we've got the filter. The other thing that I'm really also interested in, maybe you could ask about, was this gain, this idea of putting this massive amount of gain into the mixer stage.
Oh yeah, the mixers. That's kind of useful. Just before we say that though, it does ship with 2 packs of these Nazca noodles, and I was just a bit curious about them before we go any further. They're very flexible and very, very slim here. These are. Were you involved in the design of these?
Yeah, we designed those. We've had the Nazca noodles now for about 4 or 5 years, and when we developed them, we just wanted something skinny, because Eurorack is so tight that I wanted something that I could get my fingers between and be able to pull in and out. So the design of it really was dictated by the use case, which is really tight Eurorack cases.
And the kind of slack insulation makes it very easy to follow the curve so that you can see a patch more easily. And also, it's the kind of rubber that's easy to grip if you happen to be sweaty on stage.
Who, me?
No, those things matter to the user very much, I think.
Yeah. So you were talking then, Nick, then about the preamp stage in the mixer here. So we've actually got a gain knob here, which goes from 1 times gain up to about 30 times gain. So I'm assuming that will give us enough juice to bring in line level into modular. Is that right?
It will give you enough juice to do that, and it also
plus a lot more.
Yeah, and a lot more, and it can create some really interesting opportunities for feedback and overdrive within the instrument itself.
Okay, let's patch something like that in then. So I guess I could take out my an out 1 of my oscillator 1, and then into the preamp in.
I have while you're doing that, I have an example actually patched in here.
Oh, cool.
Our turn to exampleize.
That's right.
Have you got a shot for us there?
Oh, yeah.
Need a bit more level on that if you've got it. Just a bit.
So this is a feedback patch that I've created where I take the output of the delay,
It's the white cable.
the white cable here, and go back into the preamp where I max out the gain and then just bring up the level, and you can hear without it. It's a fairly clean sound, but as I bring that in, just overwhelms it.
Interesting.
But there's a lot of soft limiting both in the preamp stage and also in the output stage of the delay, so that they never quite get as sort of horribly harsh as they would otherwise.
Yeah, they'll overdrive, but they won't distort.
Oh, that's nice. So you can use it as you could also use it as just a regular drive. If you wanted to drive an oscillator, say a sine into square, you can do all of that kind of stuff quite easily.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Or bring in signals from outside through microphones or whatever.
I had one more question, which is, what's going on here? I'm moving my mod wheel, and I hadn't got around to reading that part in the manual. So my mod wheel is moving, and then all these lights are happening, but I can't really hear anything. So I would. Can you tell me what I'm doing? Because I really haven't figured it out yet.
You're setting the CC modulation level. So the CC modulation jack then could be patched into any modulation destination. And that actually uses the same Mod Tools software that's in the East Beast and the West Pest. So it can either be 0 to 5 volts, or it can be a clock synced triangle LFO, or it can be an envelope with a variable decay, or it can be a random. So you have quite a few options there.
Okay.
As to what you can use it for.
Right.
So the shape lights are just merely an indicator of what the what the modulation is doing. Or
Right, they just give you some feedback.
Right. I can understand.
Exactly.
Thank
Some
you.
visual feedback, I mean.
So tell us a little about the filter as well, because we've also got a classic Pittsburgh Modular filter in here, which again, has a very specific, and I think, I mean, because I'm going back to the SV1, the black box. Is it modelled on that kind of filter, which is just actually in the black box, it's not switch multimode. You've got multimode output. So maybe you could just explain a little bit about that.
Yeah, like the oscillators, the Pittsburgh filter has been an evolution over the years. So this is the latest revision of that filter. It's the same core that we've been using, but it's just been tweaked over the years. And this edition, because we've controlling it now digitally, what we can do is do multiple outputs. The audio signal path is 100% analog like it's always been. We're using analog switching chips to just decide which, the high pass, the low pass, or the band pass that we get to listen to. And because we're doing it digitally, we can select more than one. So you can have low pass and band pass together, which I think sounds really nice, or really any combination of all of them.
I've got to do a...
Also, we should clarify though that it is an entirely analog. It's an entirely analog device, though, isn't it? Any digital is just merely in the control. The signal path from oscillator right through to output is entirely analog, including the BBD delay there.
That's correct.
Yes, this instrument is, I like to call it extremely analog, because not only is everything analog like we've always done at Pittsburgh, but it's like the oscillators, we're not using oscillator chips. The filter, we're not using filter chips. Certainly not using the synth on a chip to create the entire voice. So it is, like I said, it is very analog.
At this point, I need to do a filter sweep because I finally figured out how to set it up. So let's just...
Yes, please.
So this is just a regular low-pass filter. Then we've got interesting modes, but that's band pass. So we're almost getting these kind of sem-like tones where we're getting the phase. Some really interesting tones that you've got out of that, and that's just. But then that's a regular. So at its heart, what is it? A 4-pole multimode filter? Is that kind of what it is at the heart? 2-pole. Okay.
At its heart, it's a 2-pole state variable filter. So you weren't wrong to say you're getting sem-like tones out of it.
Because that was a 2-pole filter as well.
Yeah.
The other thing that's happening, though, is because one way that people used to talk about wavefolding is that it was like a filter in reverse. And so if you've already got something that's doing filter-like behavior, which is to say changing harmonic content, you do that in the wavefolding, then you pass it into the filter, you're sort of doing and undoing, or to be more clear, you're shaping harmonic content in multiple places. You're shaping it at the folding stage, you're shaping it at the filter stage, and then you're shaping it again down in the dynamic stage. So all of those times you have an opportunity to evolve the harmonic content, not just in one place or 2 places.
Interesting. Gaz, it's almost like it's like chaotic additive synthesis.
Yeah.
Well, it's a whole lot of coasts at once, and we realized that here in Pittsburgh we're not actually near any coasts at all.
So you're in between, mid-coast.
Yeah. Well, it's a landlocked synth.
So Gaz, you're enjoying the filter
That's
filter
not true.
knob.
We've got rivers.
You've got rivers.
Yeah.
Okay.
I am. I mean, and it's. I mean, you can't. It won't self-oscillate the filter, will it?
It will not. No.
No.
And that, I guess that's being.
That's totally by design.
Right.
Yeah, the nice thing about the filter that we've developed is that the resonance, it has theoretically infinite resonance, which without self-oscillation, which means you can get a tremendous amount of resonance out of it without having to worry about it dumping into self-oscillation. Now, the way you balance that is that the resonance is also dependent on how much headroom it has. So you can really balance the amplitude of the waveforms going in using the mixer with the resonance to create a wide range of sounds.
Right.
It's one of the most overlooked parts of using filters is how hard you drive them. So by automatically putting a mixer ahead of the filter, you have the opportunity to really control how hard you're driving the filter, which matters to an insanely delicate degree how the resonance is behaving.
Okay, so well, let's so in the mixer then. I mean, is the mixer linear, or does it kind of have extra kind of drive in its final turn?
The mixer itself doesn't have any drive, but because you have the preamp, you can add drive sort of at will. You can add that stage because it is fully modular. You could, if you wanted to use the mixer to drive the filter, you could patch out the mixer output into the preamp and then patch the preamp into the filter.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Oh, that's interesting.
We should mention then as well, though, when you do bring in the resonance, there's not really any low end loss, is there?
No, there's no
resonance here. Yeah, so you're not
there's no low end loss. Yeah. And a little trick to add sort of the perception of even more low end is to use one of the oscillators as a sine oscillator and don't modulate it. So just let a sine sort of pass through, because a sine is sort of indifferent to filtering. So if you have a low frequency sine going through, it's going to go through all the time, giving the perception that there's even more low end.
That's what they used to do in. I'm sorry. That's what they used to do in church organs, by the way.
Oh, interesting.
Wow. for the cassock flapping effect.
I'm just actually going to. What I've done there is exactly that. So I've taken the mixer out and gone into the preamp, and then the preamp out into the filter.
when you're looking at all the patch points, then, I mean, it really is fully modular if you were to patch it all. I mean, being semi-modular, everything is normaled, and we can see with the green text where the normaling is. These shape controls along the bottom here, we can see that the LFO is kind of pre-patched to modulate those. And then obviously you can break any of those connections with the patch points. And we should mention then, when we're talking about modulation and LFOs, there is just a single LFO which has got a variable range. We have this little shift button here, and I guess in a moment we'll talk about this little digital section, but in this shift section here, we can toggle the LFO. We can actually see the rate then going from a slow LFO to a fast LFO. And that LFO also has, we can patch out a triangle or a square from there too. Mm-hmm. And is there also any other tricks up the sleeve of the LFO?
Well, there's one analog LFO, and that's it. And it's really, I like to call them dumb LFOs because it doesn't listen to anybody. It just kind of does its thing. But right. It does have the two ranges, so you can go into audio rate or you can go very, very slow. That paired with the digital LFO and the digital mod tools. And then the idea that you could use any of the oscillators also as LFOs. There are plenty of modulation opportunities.
Yeah,
right.
Because those LFOs, those oscillators as LFOs, then we've got all of that complexity from those wave-shaped LFOs.
Exactly. So they'll be complicated LFOs.
Yeah,
and also they can also be voltage controlled to give you.
That's right. Well, I mean, this LFO. This LFO doesn't have a rate in. It's just a sort of free running, right? The actual analog.
Exactly.
LFO. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense. I wonder whether we could have a look at the dynamics control, because this initially had me a little bit flummoxed. I kind of understood in the West Pest how it worked, but I'm not entirely clear on how this patches, because there's multiple modes, and then the dynamics knob itself, which has quite a large, is physically larger, seems to be the sort of initial level like you'd have on a VCA. Is that, am I roughly speaking in the right ballpark there?
Yes, the dynamics knob itself, that could be considered the pass-through.
Right.
If you're talking like a VCA. So that's going to open it up and give you an initial level, sort of the base level. Right. But the way the dynamics works is that there's two modes. There's VCA mode, where it functions exactly like you would expect a VCA to function.
Is that the top? That's the top mode, is it? Is that the one?
That's the top mode.
Okay. Yes.
And then below that, we have low-pass gate mode. There's two versions of low-pass gate mode where you can pluck it or not pluck it. And that just affects the initial attack opening that low-pass gate, because our dynamics is, we don't use the traditional Vactrol classic low-pass gate circuit. We've engineered a new circuit that allows us to offer quite a bit more flexibility, allowing for variable response times, and I think very, very nice sound. So I just have a very simple patch here that I can demonstrate the dynamics with. And you can see that I have low-pass gate mode and Pluck on. And you can hear that initial pluck. It sounds like almost you're striking a string. And that allows us to, we keep talking about playing with the harmonics and sound and changing the timbre. This allows us additional control over those as well. The whole idea of these evolving sounds is it gives you very lifelike, very energetic sounds overall.
And of course, you've got the low pass gate. You've got the resonance factor in there as well, which again was something I hadn't seen before until, or hadn't really explored until I got into the West Pest, which I've got here, by the way.
Yeah, the resonance, because the low pass gate mode really is a filter. So because of that, we can add a nice resonance to it. Now, there isn't a natural resonance to a low-pass gate circuit. So Michael has developed something that isn't overwhelming, but just adds a bit extra to the sound. So it's not going to be the same type of resonance that you get from our filter, but it does add some oomph for a bit
I've got
more
this. I've got this here. It's almost it's like having another filter, but it's got more characteristics. So you could do some interesting things with that. I guess we could just go out of the sample and hold, couldn't we, and go into the resonance, the control of the resonance. I think there's a way to go in there. I'm just trying to see it now. I need my low pass.
You have two CV inputs for the dynamics. You have the response input, and then you have the dynamics. So the response sets the Pluck decay, and then the dynamics would be your typical VCA amplitude.
Yeah. So there we go. I've managed to more or less figure out how to create like a sample and hold, but on the dynamics resonance, which is a bit different to doing it on the filter. So that it's possible to have those. So you can treat them both like filters, but they have very different characteristics, different behaviors, right?
Yeah, the idea, and Michael could talk about this, was to have multiple stages.
Yeah, so the dynamic circuit is optimized to act in, well, it's called a dynamic circuit because it's designed, wow, I'm doing a terrible job at this. It's there to control dynamics, even though some of the time it's a filter. It's basically there as a way of making articulations of the sound in time. If it's stacked after the other stuff, then it superimposes its own characteristic on all the other characteristics that have been there before.
Right, gotcha.
It's designed to emulate the behavior of natural envelopes that a sound evolving over time, the way that a drum strike sounds different over time depending on how hard the drum is hit, how tight the head of the drum is, that's the response control, and so on. So it's especially easy to understand in percussive terms, but it really is the case with just about any natural sound. The way that a trumpet has an initial attack quality that isn't just about amplitude, it's also about harmonics.
Right.
If that makes sense.
The shift and mode on the dynamics, what's that doing? Because if I press that and I get my little MIDI light.
Yeah, that turns MIDI control on. So what that does is that bypasses the ADSR2 and just sends the raw MIDI gate to Pluck the dynamics.
And that Pluck circuit, the Pluck option is designed as a kind of shortcut to percussive articulations.
Right.
It's very performance oriented.
And that will free up our ADSR2 then.
Exactly.
So we mentioned then we've got this like digital module, like control module at the far left hand side here. Now, this has got many little tricks up its sleeve, hasn't it? We can this is where we can enable our arpeggiator, our clock source, I guess. And we've got
is this effectively? I mean, I've got the West Pest here, which has got the same deal but there's a lot more kind of information about the multifunction and the modulation controls. I can't see, because you were saying that you could have the CCH mod output here and set the modes, but I don't see the legend here. Is this something that's a bit more sort of hidden when it comes to those modes, or is it easy to access that?
It's easy to access, but it is hidden because we wanted to keep it a secret.
Oh.
No, the truth is that was, we developed all that for the East Beast and the West Pest, which was after TAIGA was finished. But it worked so well in the East Beast and the West Pest, I was like, well, I got to put it in here. So the legends aren't on there, but it does all the functions. So to switch what the CC output does, I can patch into, say, the pitch here. is you just do edit and then octave down. And it's labeled wheel. And you're just assigning what the mod wheel does, essentially, or whatever CC channel you would have it programmed to.
Right. Okay, got you.
And you have multiple functions. It can be either 0 to 5 volts, which would just be like turning a knob, for instance, or it can be a clock synced triangle LFO, in which case the mod wheel is controlling the clock division, or it can be a decay envelope, where the mod wheel controls the length of decay, or you have a couple versions of random available, which is interesting as well.
So I'm just curious. Do you think that this is kind of the future? This kind of notion of the hybrid and the digital electronics sort of coexisting together, because of the level that you can add afterlife function to things that have already been built in hardware. I mean, how would you do that with this? Is there a way to kind of update firmware in this guy? I noticed, I think it was on the West, there's actually a USB internal connection that you can flash the firmware and change the functionality. Is that the same sort of principle we've got going on with this?
Yes, you can update the firmware. There is a USB. It's internal as well, because it's a Eurorack module sort of at its heart. So, if you have it in a Eurorack case, so you pull it out, there's a USB on the side. You can't update the firmware. So as new ideas and feedback come through, I'm sure we'll be adding those features.
Yeah. So taking that idea of it being a Eurorack module, I mean, I was just trying to work out how many modules it actually is. If we were to count like a digital module 1, oscillators 4, mixer 5, preamp 6, LFO 7, filter 8, 2 ADSRs 9, 10, the dynamics 11, the delay, which we haven't looked at yet, 12. But also we got a sample and hold, haven't we, down the bottom here? So
there's
it's at least
sample and hold in there.
There's a mixer splitter. So it's depending on how you want to count them. There's quite a few Eurorack modules in here. And the nice thing is, unlike a lot of the semi-modulars out there, this TAIGA is fully modular, which means if you start a Eurorack, this is your heart, and you expand on it, you don't outgrow this. You can use just the oscillators. You can use just the filter. You could use just the ADSR. Right. And that's always been really important to us. We did the same thing with the SV1. We did the same thing with the Voltage Lab, because we want people to not feel constrained by their instruments. And if they feel, you know what, this instrument's perfect, but it needs 3 envelopes, great. This is perfect, but it needs another oscillator. Sure, you could just add another oscillator. It allows you to expand without feeling like you're going to outgrow it.
Right, and it can sit at the core of a more complicated system. A lot of other semi-modular devices tend to make a sort of gesture toward modularity, but we try to make a lot more than just a gesture and say, no, it's fully modular.
Gaz, you briefly mentioned the delay there as well. Which,
I was just going to talk about that. Yeah. So the delay at the end here, this is a classic bucket Brigade. Quite a short maximum time on it.
And really grungy.
You mentioned... Oh, sorry, Rich. You mentioned to me before, you said it was almost like it adds a sense of space, or a sense of... It just takes the sound and takes it away from being a flat up front and sets it back a little bit.
Yeah, with Bucket Brigade delay, as a designer, you're never happy with you can't be happy with every aspect of the end result. It's like you're balancing 3 things, and you can pick the 2 you're interested in. So, and in the past we've had long, but this one we wanted to make sure that it was useful as almost a somewhere between a chorus, and you can do some reverb effects, but you can do some pitch modulation effects, and you can also use it for lo-fi effects. But it is a dual 4096 BBD chip delay, and I think it sounds very nice. It will self-oscillate, but as it self-oscillates, it'll overdrive again, but it won't distort.
Yeah, but it'll do. So you get that sort of tight, and we can modulate this as well.
Yeah, I was just setting that up myself now.
But it's got that real sort of low. Is that as far as it can go in terms of clocking, or can you finagle it into longer delays by sending it the right voltages for modulation, or is that as far? Is the time knob as far as it goes?
You can give it a little bit more time with an additional CV. So if you would use, say, the CC output and just give it 5 more volts, you will get more time out of it.
Ah, okay. I might try that now.
And of course, we could take that LFO and go into audio rate into the time.
Oh, switch your shot, Gaz. Can't see what you're doing.
Yeah.
Turn it up a bit.
That sounds very nice.
It's nice.
That's interesting.
Yeah. That's cool.
What we were trying to do with the Echoes unit in TAIGA is showcase that there's more to bucket brigade delays and voltage control bucket brigade delays than you can do than just a half-second repeat.
Yeah.
You can use it as an integral part of sound design to add space and to add a sense of movement or lo-fi. There's quite a bit a BBD can do to the sound. And that's sort of the theme of the instrument overall, is that each section builds and changes the sound in some way to create something really unique at the output.
Right, and it's also a part of the set of tools and how they interact with one another. It plays well with its neighbors, or at least we think it does. Well, it may not be appropriate in another atmosphere, but it seems appropriate here.
Yeah, it almost becomes an oscillator in its own right. And I go, yeah, like you say, Gaz, if you start.
That's right.
This is audio rate mod, and then. Interesting. Oh, good fun. Good fun.
Yeah.
Obviously, rather, even though we've all got setups here, I mean, we're trying to keep this flowing, and for us to each kind of set up these perfect patch examples each time we're talking about a feature would probably have taken us a little bit longer than we have time for today. So it's very much an ad hoc thing, but I do encourage you to check out the other reviews that are out there. Hopefully myself and Gaz will take a bit of time to use them in anger, as it were, and be able to show you a little bit more about it. So how's it going? I mean, it's been out for a month, or at least announced for a month, and now you're shipping. So are you having... are people interested? Are you finding that people are ready to receive this? Because I know people think quite highly of the Pittsburgh Modular stuff. I know I'm constantly getting emails from people saying, "Do you ever want to pass on the voltage research lab, because they're very well sought after." So are you? I'm hoping you're getting a lot of orders, right?
We are. Thanks to our partnership with Create Audio, we've been able to do something that we as Pittsburgh Modular could have never done before. So with TAIGA, now we will be able to make enough for everyone that wants one, which is something we've never been able to do. So this is an instrument that will be available hopefully for a long, long time. And everyone that wants to try Pittsburgh's sound will now have the opportunity. And again, thanks to working with Create Audio, we have distribution all over the world. We have manufacturing is now handled at a scale that we could never do. And I think it looks as good and sounds as good as anything, if not better than anything we've ever done, which I'm so proud. I've had this sitting on my desk now for over a year. I think we may have showed it to you even last year at Super Booth.
You got it out of a suitcase and said, "Here it is," in a field, and then put it back away. Yeah. We couldn't hear it. That's right, yeah.
So it's so exciting to get it out there and be able to talk about it and be able to share it with everyone. It's been great.
When you mentioned there though about the build quality, I mean it's something that I've really enjoyed since I've been using it is the action on the knobs is super they feel really nice, they feel really solid, there's no wobble to them at all, and I think the action is just very 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 playable. I'm assuming that's a very very conscious decision.
Oh yeah.
But that filter for instance is it's a really lovely smooth action, all the controls.
It's a combination of choosing the correct potentiometers for the feel we want, and then also making sure you're using the right size knobs and that the knobs feel right as well.
The rubbery edge is important. Yeah. Again, for the sweaty finger effect.
A few years ago, I was given the opportunity, again, thanks to this great partnership with Create Audio, to design the new Pittsburgh Modular and Create Audio knobs. So not only are these knobs feel great, but they're unique to us. You know, the nice thing about we could do with these is we can create knobs now in any color we want. So they can be instrument specific, they can be function specific. We can really use that to showcase and highlight aspects of instruments, which is something we couldn't do in the past using the classic sort of Radio Shack knobs.
Right. You can sort of feel your way through them in the dark too, because, for instance, the large blue knob, which I have the wrong shot for though, but you can feel where the pointer is, even if you don't see it. So you've got the tactile feedback as well as the visual feedback.
Well, guys, thank you ever so much for watching. That is our sort of rather rambling look at the history and the topography of the new TAIGA from Pittsburgh Modular. Available now. I think it's is it $799 US or $699? Which one is it?
$799.
$799 US, probably similar in terms of pounds. But thank you so much. Thank you, Pittsburgh guys, Michael and Richard, for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. This sort of rambling approach was a great, fun way to explore an issue, because this is how people explore synthesizers. So to do it with you guys has been a blast.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Gaz, also for joining us. We'll see you again soon. You're going to be playing it at the gig in Bath, assuming this gets there before we do.
Yeah, well, my bad work man, I'm going to be doing it. And I've got a few surprises in store for that show too.
Excellent. Well, you heard it here first, folks. That was us and Pittsburgh Modular and Gaz looking at the TAIGA Pittsburgh Modular. See you next time.